The Northwestern game, it makes you wonder, is Penn State intentionally running up the score and trying to cover the spread?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, that is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Zach Seyko. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Become an everydayer. Help support the show. Subscribe to YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts for Locked On Nittany Lions, and let me know your thoughts. Is Penn State intentionally running up the score, and is James Franklin actively trying to cover the spread for Penn State? That's what we're going to discuss today. I know it's been a few days later. I had, like Penn State, I had a bye week myself, so podcasts are going to be coming back in full force regularly every single day leading up to the games, instant recaps, and so much more coverage to go along with the Nittany Lions. But I appreciate the fans bearing with me. Saw the little hotel set up, and now we're back in the domain here, the home studio. So is Penn State actually trying to cover the spread and intentionally running up the score? Well, let's start with the intentionally running up the score part. In the final segment, I have some more thoughts about Penn State's impression on the Vegas spread and how they approach it. But for intentionally running up the score, technically yes, but no is the short answer. James Franklin and Penn State are not intentionally running up the score, but it depends on how you define it. Okay, that's really what this boils down to, because some people were arguing with my statement on X, Twitter. Again, follow the show on Twitter, follow my personal account on Twitter, that Penn State is running up the score regardless if they add points at the tail end of the game. Well, isn't the objective of any sports game to score points? Like, come on. I don't think that I was being contradicting. It is not contradicting because there is a motive. There's this unethical intention to run up the score to basically gloat and brag. Shout out to the Michigan fans for making this post go viral and getting over 100,000 impressions on social media. Appreciate you. I really do. So let's define this. Is Penn State running up the score? So running up the score, in my opinion, is trying to intentionally embarrass an opponent, to really stick it to them, not pad a resume and look good in front of the college football playoff committee. And let's look at this particular situation against Northwestern. 41-13 is the final. Penn State was in plus territory, not at its own 10-yard line. So there was an opportunity for Penn State to score. Running up the score would have looked like this, going no huddle with 2 minutes and 20 seconds left. So you run your 2-minute offense when you are up 34-13 and you leave your starters in. That's what running the score up would have looked like in this case. But it didn't. And then you have maybe some more complicated passing concepts, some deep routes, right? Trying to score in that time frame instead of just saying, hey, let's get our yards and just maintain control of the football here. But points matter in college football. Okay. And this is the biggest takeaway of whether you're judging Penn State on running up the score or not. College football is not the same as professional football. It's not like the NFL. In the NFL, you have a clear-cut goal. Win your games and you can get into the postseason. Win your division and you're guaranteed a spot in the postseason, okay? In college football, that is not the case. You don't simply get into the college football playoff by winning your division or winning your conference. That certainly helps, but it doesn't guarantee you anything. You need style points in college football, and that's just the way it is. Win your games, but it's a matter of how much did you win by and how did you win that game? Was it a fluke? Was it close? How much did you win? What was the margin of that score against the caliber of opponent? A win is a win in the NFL. A win is not a win in college football. Penn State beats Northwestern by 3. That's a big concern. Let's bring into the Kansas City Chiefs here because they just beat the New York Jets, and it was surprising that it was a 3-point deficit. That is still an equivalent win if they beat the Jets by 300. Penn State beating Northwestern by 300 is a much better look, obviously, right? I don't need to sit back and justify that. But winning by a larger margin against Northwestern helps Penn State case significantly as opposed to Kansas City, whether they beat the Jets by 1 or 100. It didn't matter. And that's my point. And that's the problem with college football is that there really isn't exactly a direct goal, right? You don't have something tangible that you can achieve. You just kind of have to win your games and hope for the best that all the outcomes go in that direction of the biggest margin that you can think of, okay? The biggest margin imaginable that's realistic. But we know it has to be this way because you have a 4-team college football playoff. And I get it. They're expanding to 12 teams, so it's going to be a little bit easier to get into the playoff system, but points matter in this case. I don't care that people are saying, well, that's 7 points versus Northwestern. Is it really going to matter? It's not going to make a difference to the college football playoff committee. When you splice it like that, let's redirect it. How about a 28-point deficit against a conference opponent on the road? Sounds a little more flattering, doesn't it? That matters to the committee. Then there's the argument that this isn't the BCS era anymore. So you don't need as many style points to get into the college football playoff. And like I said, going from 4 to 12 is going to just boost the odds. Okay. I don't need to justify it any other way than that. Going from 4 to 12 teams, there's more spots available. But you went from 2 to 4, and no, a computer system isn't crunching the numbers and putting in the quote unquote top 2 teams into this championship game. But right now, and the way that it's been for the past decade, 4 spots is still difficult to come by. And remember, in 2016, Penn State actually missed out on a college football playoff berth because they lost to Michigan by too much, according to the committee. So don't tell me that style points don't matter in this case, that Penn State can't pad the resume by adding on some points against Northwestern or preserving the shutout against the Iowa Hawkeyes. They could have put the backup defense in against Iowa. But points matter, margins matter against any opponent that you're playing, okay? It was 10-10 at halftime. Northwestern really gave Penn State a fight early in the game. You had to make a statement if you're the Nittany Lions, and they did. Now, about that specific play in question when it was 34-13 and Penn State did go up by 41-13. Was it a fake kneel down? We're going to discuss in just a moment. But first, let's hear from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It is easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs, and then all you got to do is add the purple hiring frame to let people know that you are, in fact, hiring. And simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills, just the right experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then ultimately hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the best qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The Locked On Podcast Network is amping up college football coverage like you've never seen it before. And college football season, now that it is in full swing, Locked On is bringing you Locked On College Football Kickoff live every Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, to preview the weekend slate of games, to talk about the biggest headlines, to talk about the playoff implications, live on every single Locked On College YouTube channel, and then wherever you get your podcasts, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network for the college channels, after it's all said and done, when it is finished, going live 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time across all of the college YouTube channels, including Locked On Nittany Lions, Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. You won't want to miss it. The situation with the play, Beau Pribula comes in, the backups for the offense are clearly in, and it's 34-13. Penn State is in Northwestern territory after the Daquan Hardy turnover, the interception that set them up for this play. Like I said, Penn State wasn't at its own 10. They were in Northwestern territory and could have easily scored and did. But the fake knee, So the play in question is Beau Pribula tried to orchestrate a fake kneel down, and James Franklin, Mike Yursich called a fake knee to completely fool Northwestern, and that's how Penn State was able to score. Anybody with eyes and is not completely biased against Penn State knows that that was a fake quarterback power, and that is pretty typically run with dual threat quarterbacks, not just at Penn State, but across Power Five, Group Five, any college football, Division Two, Division Three. That play is traditionally run with a dual threat quarterback. Anyone with eyes knew that. That rules expert that came in on the Big Ten Network is in the wrong line of work because he's the one that started this fiasco, saying, "Well, there's a 100% there's a 100-year-old precedent and Penn State can't run that, and he should have been down." Dual threat quarterbacks run this all the time. And what is Beau Pribula? A dual threat quarterback. It faked out the defense because it was essentially a play action with Beau Pribula faking the run. It got the linebackers to bite, to hesitate, and allowed Trey Potts to run up the seam behind them, and a good pass by Beau Pribula. Anyone who stands by their take that this is a fake knee, because I've seen plenty of people that are adamant about it, they're just trying to be annoying, a nuisance, really, because they don't actually believe it. They're just trying to say that to get under anyone's skin as a Penn State supporter, a Nittany Lions fan. No team in football history has ever run a formation. Find me a formation that looks exactly like that, that people use to kneel the football and win the game, sit on the clock, right? That formation has never been used as a victory formation. It was a shotgun set. It was Beau Pribula with a, when the victory formation, you see all the guys crowded around behind the quarterback. There's usually somebody about 10, 15 yards behind the football in case there's a bad snap for anything crazy to happen. No, none of those elements were on the football field for that play. And Beau wasn't slow to the line of scrimmage. There really wasn't this, like I said, this nuance, this understanding that, hey, Penn State was going to kneel the football. There was a purpose to this play, and it was to get yards and it was to score. Penn State stays aggressive for a couple of reasons in this situation. One, because they could have run out the clock. Okay. But the two reasons are: one, you get valuable experience for your role players and your backups. Clearly, Beau needs the practice, the experience, because he almost unintentionally downed himself by allowing his knee to touch the turf. And that's why we have this play in question. So, if anything, it was slightly poorly executed on Beau's part because it almost became a second and long with accidentally downing himself. And two, it was an opportunity to finally put Northwestern to rest. Yes, the game was out of reach, 34-13, but that was the kill shot. Northwestern gave Penn State a fight. I am not afraid to admit that. But also, you could have just put this one to bed and said, okay, we're not going to let anything crazy happen here. Northwestern turned the ball over in its own territory. Northwestern had multiple timeouts. Northwestern hung around in the game for longer than expected, really. If you don't like Penn State scoring more points late in the game, or any team for that matter, how about there's a simple solution for that? You can stop them. You can stop the backup offense from scoring, and they want to score. Beau Pribula, Trey Potts, any of the younger offensive linemen, they want to go down the field and lead a scoring drive. They're not going to go out there, well, guys, let's look around here. The scoreboard says we're up by 20 plus points. We might as well just get 3 to 4 yards here and let the clock burn. No, that's not what they're thinking. Beau Pribula and all those guys want to get on the stat. They want to get in the stack column. They want to get on the scoreboard themselves. Why do the starters get to have all the fun, especially when these opportunities are few and far in between, and you need to prove yourself to the coaching staff? If that play is poorly executed to a point where it doesn't work, or it's a loss on the play, let's say Pribula does touch the knee to the turf and it's a down right there, it becomes second down and long. That's a bad look for the coaching staff. So you're going to sit back and tell me that, oh, well, the backups, because the margin was out of reach, and you don't want to look like you're running up the score and being disrespectful to Northwestern at its own field. And there's somebody, I think people in the stands were calling, they were heard saying that James Franklin was a coward. Northwestern fans were claiming Franklin was a coward because the backups wanted to score a touchdown and have a big play. I'm sorry. What are you supposed to tell the young guys who are hungry for this opportunity? What are you supposed to do? Oops, let's just roll over so we don't hurt anyone's feelings. We're just putting you out there for show. it, you hear it, right? You're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, it does sound crazy. It makes sense. I think it was just a way to take a jab at Penn State, at James Franklin. There was really any fuel that people can add to the fire to try to make Penn State look bad in this case. That is what people are trying to do. That's why the Michigan fans got a hold of my take and sent it to the moon. Again, really appreciate it. But Penn State is not trying to embarrass opponents and be disrespectful to the game by adding points. So, yes, if you want to say, well, they are running up the score no matter the way, you're contradicting yourself. Okay, that's fine. But they're not trying to disrespect the opponent or disrespect the game. It's to get backups opportunities, and it's to make sure that you look a lot better in front of the college football playoff committee. That's really what it boils down to. Penn State cares about itself. Penn State doesn't care what Northwestern thinks going into the locker room after that final result, whether it's 34 points or 41 points. They don't care. They care, okay, are we going to be 12-0 at the end of the season, 11-1, whatever? What's our standing with the college football playoff committee? So, but Penn State also conveniently covered the spread in this instance against the Wildcats. It's a fun discussion to have. Does Franklin and Penn State actually know the spread? Are they paying attention to it going into these contests? Let's discuss in just a moment. But first, another word from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over unders, so much more. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com Penn State rivals. Check them out. Subscribe over there for more analysis, insight, recaps, and coverage of Penn State football, men's basketball, men's hockey, wrestling. It's all coming up here as we're getting close to the winter sports season. That is HappyValleyInsider.com. Does James Franklin and Penn State know the spread? Is that factored into the game plan here? I don't know about necessarily being in the game plan, but are they aware of the spread? In short, yes. James Franklin and Penn State are aware of the spread. Now, Josh Pate, I really like Josh Pate, his content, his coverage over at CBS Sports, and he's had some conversations with James Franklin, and he alleges that the two people most aware of Penn State's spread on college football Saturdays are Josh himself and James Franklin. Okay, so that's coming from Pate. But at this point in time, in all seriousness, every coach, every player, every team has to know what the spread is at this point, just because of where we are as a sports culture. Gambling is more excessive. It's more out in the open. It's encouraged at this point. So the spread is on full display. You have TV broadcasts putting it up there and saying, well, the X team is almost within 2 touchdowns. That would cover the spread. Or if they get a field goal here, that would go over the total. The commenters making backhanded comments saying that, oh, well, that would have helped out some bettors if XYZ would have happened. So it's discussed. It's not as taboo as it was 70s, 80s, 90s when, yes, you knew about sports betting, but how could you ever do that? Now it's the hallmark of football, basketball, you name it. It's also bulletin board material for a lot of teams, as it should be. If you're a coach, you say to your team, hey, look, we're an underdog. Vegas thinks that we're 28-point underdogs. No one's giving us a chance. Now, Penn State hasn't been an underdog in this case, but you get what I'm saying, right? It's bulletin board material for Colorado. Colorado has been was a serious underdog to USC and lost by 7 points. You mean to tell me that Deion Sanders didn't say that? Maybe not necessarily about the spread, but the players know it. It's not a secret. It is out in the open. Or let's look at it the other way. If Penn State is not that big of a favorite, Coach James Franklin could say hypothetically, hey, no one believes that we're as good as we think we are. Let's go prove it to them. So in the case of, well, Penn State's only a 14-point favorite, speaking hypothetically right now, James Franklin might be able to use that as a point of motivation, bulletin board material that let's go prove the doubters wrong so that they think that we should be bigger favorites in the future. So when it comes to the spread, it is actually an objective assessment of how people expect the game to end, the result to be, and there's going to be believers on one side of the spectrum or the other. This age of gambling, it's encouraged. You can't escape it. You're watching a football broadcast, professional or college, and it feels like every other advertisement is one for a sports betting market or something like that. It's a storyline, it's an angle to talk about the game. It's not taboo anymore. Networks have it on the screen, as I have mentioned. So, yes, James Franklin and Penn State are aware of the spread, but this is the case for every team. And it factors into the mindset of players. How would you feel, right? If the experts in Vegas told you that your team was going to lose by X amount of points to the rival or didn't think you were that good. You're basically being undersold as a team. That is perfect motivation for an already hungry team. Again, speaking hypothetically, but that's honestly, if I was a coach, I would do it. I would say, hey, they don't believe that you're good enough to beat this team by X amount of points, or hey, they have you as a 3 touchdown underdog. Let's go prove them differently. I'm saying it's a good way to motivate your team. But and NFL players in the past, even before this current day and age of gambling, have admitted that they know the spread. They pay attention to it because, yeah, it does. If people don't believe in you or say that you're projected to lose by this amount of points, let's go prove them wrong. There's an emotional factor to it. James Franklin and Penn State and the players know the spread because, frankly, you can't escape it. You can't get away from it. It's no secret. And I really don't think you should ignore it. But I get it. You just got to go out there and whatever the spread is, you just got to play and get the win. But it really goes back to what I said. A win is not a win in college football. You got to win a certain way. You got to win with style. You got to win by a certain margin, especially against teams that are not in your league. That's really what it boils down to. It's going to do it for Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. Become an everydayer if you haven't already. Subscribe to YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Let me know, comment down below if you think Penn State is trying to intentionally run up the score, if they try to factor in the spread into their game plan. I want to hear it from you. We're going to have more conversations. We're back at full strength here, being back at the home studio. So Penn State now knows its opponents in the Big Ten from 2024 all the way to 2028. And Penn State needs to accomplish some things coming out of the bye week. I'm going to have a list of those for you in an upcoming episode as well. So for all that and more, keep it right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.